But what I was a little taken back by was how many people right off the bat had no problem being aggressive and criticizing Terry Francona. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not against that. If you want to criticize Terry Francona, that's okay. All I'm saying is I'm taken back by it a little bit because I thought that, it's Terry Francona. I thought the guy could do no wrong, right? Like, and that's not mocking anyone. That's just how I felt. I was like, man, he's such a big figure coming in that there's going to be a lot of people that even with mistakes early might have the in Terry Francona we trust mentality. I actually don't think that's going to be the case because, for one, we've already seen that. But my theory to this is I think the reason people are going to be so aggressive towards Terry Francona, guys, is mainly because he kind of feels like our last hope. Because if we can't win with Terry Francona leading the way, if this team can't find a way to turn it around with a real manager like Terry Francona, it truly feels like it's going to be a kick in the groin moving forward when you can't find ways to win with a generational player in Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, who, by the way, good for him. I was worried that maybe the hype was getting a little bit too big because we saw such a small sample size. I was pumping the brakes on being all in on Matt McClain guy because we hadn't even seen a full regular season. Man, the kid's special. This kid's unbelievable. Cincinnati, the city of duos, if you will. When you look at Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow with the Bengals and now Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain with the Reds, it's pretty cool seeing those dynamics there. But I think the reason people are so aggressive towards Terry Francona is because they're just pleading with him, like, figure it out. For the love of God, please. Because if we can't win with Hunter Green, if we can't win with Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain, and we can't win with Terry Francona, we will never, ever win again in this city. And I do believe that part of me feels like that's one reason why we're seeing fans be so aggressive early is that it's almost like a pleading with him type of thing because it's the reality of, man, we put all of our eggs, a lot of the fan base put a lot of eggs in the basket of David Bell's the problem. Get a real manager in here and the rest will fall into place. And 3 games in, people are panicking and they don't like what they see. And Terry Francona is not safe either at this point when it comes to fan backlash. My theory is it just feels like he is our last hope at this actually working. And if it doesn't work with him, I think that's when you'll see the fan base hit an all-time low if that's the case.
When else can Cincinnati and the Reds specifically get this? When else can you get a Hall of Fame manager with a generational shortstop and a Cy Young favorite, at least in the mix, as your ace? What other box do you need to check to go out and compete? I mean, you have these 3 guys for very cheap. Obviously, the manager's contract doesn't count against payroll or anything along those lines. We've talked extensively about how awesome Hunter's contract is to be the pitcher he is for this rotation. And then Ellie on his rookie deal before we have to have any kind of conversation about extensions in 2 or 3 years. This is the time when you should be going, quote-unquote, all in. And I didn't even mention Matt McClain also on a rookie deal, 2 home runs over the weekend. Looks like the guy we expected him to be. I mean, this team has every box you need to check for a small market team to be competitive. And if it doesn't work out, I guess the question we have to ask as Reds fans is when will we be able to check anywhere near this number of boxes again? I mean, when will we hit the lottery of having these things line up again? We talked on the opening day stream that the next core, if you will, coming through the Reds organization doesn't necessarily line up right with the end of this one. There's a gap, and that gap is what the Chattanooga Lookouts were last year, and that's one of the worst minor league teams in all of affiliated baseball. So, I mean, this has to work. This 3-4 year window, whatever we want to call it, with Terry Francona and Ellie De La Cruz and the first 4 years of the 6-year deal of Hunter Green. I mean, this has to work. This team has to be competitive. And I don't think it working necessarily means we get a World Series or we don't. I think it's the fact that, we're consistently competitive for the division and we're winning playoff series and we're advancing and we're doing something we haven't seen in the last 30 years. And that's what we should be able to have in the expectation with this group. And I'm not losing that off of one series, but it's hard to grasp on to some kind of massive overhaul and change to this franchise when we've lost the opening series the same way we've lost the last 2 years. And it's the things that we thought maybe could change overnight, and they didn't. It was base running mistakes. It was errors. It was fielding issues. It was dumb mental mistakes that bit this team. And I just don't know when you draw the line in the sand. You said if March issues are May issues, you'll start pulling your hair out. Well, I mean, you're still not even to the All-Star break. Are we allowed to freak out then? I mean, then you're only 1 year in to Terry Francona. Are you allowed to freak out then? I think that's going to be the hardest part with this whole thing for Reds fans is not only is it year one of Terry Francona, this lineup we all know isn't up to snuff with trying to win a World Series or anything along those lines. And we know that this core, though we think that they are MVP contenders and Cy Young contenders and all-stars, they're all very young players that have a long ways to go. So when is it okay to hit the panic button with this team? I don't know. It might not even be this year. So I think that's a very, very frustrating thing with Reds fans is we want immediate change because we haven't seen any kind of relative success in so long. It's different if we've seen this team, mess with success over the last 20 years and now we start slow and it's okay, well, maybe we'll figure it out. And if not this year, at least, we won a playoff series 4 years ago and we don't have that here. We thought we had immediate change in hiring Terry Francona, and we didn't get it in Series 1, so that's why, fans are losing their mind. And with the amount of success or lack thereof that the Reds team has given Cincinnati over the last however many years, they have every right to lose their mind.
And you said it kind of right there. The clock is ticking. The Cincinnati Reds clock is ticking.
Right.
I know it's speaking a little bit in exaggeration here. But once the Ellie deal doesn't happen, right, and he goes through his contract, that's like the time frame that we have because it pretty much goes together with how long Terry Francona's here. It goes together with a lot of other guys as well. And that's my mark. If the Reds aren't going to be able to have success by the year 2029, they're never going to have – they're just never going to have success. That's just what it is, and not to compare us to the Angels, and I won't do that. The Angels had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani and were unable to win baseball games on the same roster. They had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. They didn't win games. So this isn't like a new thing amongst Major League Baseball. You can have elite talent and not be great. The Reds have to build a roster that's capable of winning a lot of games. This roster is not capable of winning a lot of games. I still think it's capable of being competitive. I think there's a difference. But this is not a playoff caliber roster. It's not. I think they can fight. And I think they can finish second in the division. But what does that get you at the end of the year? I don't know. Probably nothing. I'd imagine second in the NL Central gets you absolutely zilch. The division is not good. Going forward, I would like to see the Reds, at least the young guys that we have, develop, get better, improve, and I need it to happen relatively quickly. I never once said this team was a World Series caliber team this year. Next year is when the pressure is going to start to be put on. Next year, I'm going to start needing significant changes. I'm not even going to call it a rebuild year. This is like a bounce back year. This is the year that happens after a colossal disaster, and we're just trying to get our feet under us again. That's what I'm going to call this year. I know fans aren't going to want to hear it. That's just what it is. That's how I picture it. I'm not mad at Terry Francona. I'm not mad at the players. This is just the roster that has been given to us. Until we know what we've got here, there's no way of knowing. I love Matt McClain. We're going to get into the positives too. Matt McClain, fantastic. I love Matt McClain. CES, proving me wrong game by game. But we've got about 5 guys here, 4 to 5 guys, especially with Stevenson out right now and Spencer Steer nowhere to be found. With those 2 guys seemingly out of the picture, there's not enough pieces to drive home runs, to steal bases, to do the things that you need to do to be a championship caliber team. There's not enough guys. I thought the bullpen, for what it's worth, I think the bullpen had a great weekend. I think the bullpen played outside of one guy. They pitched fine. I thought the starting pitching for the most part pitched great. I thought Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green, did they look rusty at times? Sure, but they looked great. Nick Martinez through 4 innings yesterday was great. Fell apart at the end, but he looked solid. The Reds have enough pieces here to be competitive. We're just going to need Terry Francona to be the guy that I don't firmly believe that he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be that elevator that we all think he's going to take us to the top.
How many months or series or how much do you think that this season is extended by the NL Central? And what I mean by that is kind of what we saw last year when you're just looking around and we were watching the Reds day in and day out and you're just not excited about this team. You're just not blown away in terms of them being a contender. But every time you pull up the standings, you're still right there. And you have to, stay invested and see where this season could go. How long, though we might know the answer about this team when it comes to contention very, very soon, how long will this season be extended by playing in an NL Central that is one of, if not the worst divisions in baseball?
Yeah, we are going to – the Cincinnati Reds, again, this is why early on in the year, the Reds are going to be in talks to win the division to be in contention for the division for a long time. The season is not over. It's not even remotely close to being over. It's just from what I've seen on paper, it's because I watched it all last year. I kind of know what's going to happen this year. If CES can be a generational superstar, great. If Matt McClain's going to be that guy, great. Ellie, we know already is. So we have some of the pieces. We just don't have them all yet. To answer your question, the division's going to be open for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep the Reds in it. It's going to keep pretty much everybody in the Central in it. Maybe not. I mean, the Brewers, they look terrible, but I guess they played the torpedo bats, so who knows?
They did.
Who knows? I think the Pirates are always terrible. I don't even count them as a real franchise. But the Reds, the Brewers, the Cubs, and maybe the Cardinals, maybe they're going to fight for it. But like Kinner said, nobody's thinking the Cardinals are great. They swept the Twins, the opening series. Nobody thinks the Cardinals are great. They're 3-0 right now. Nobody thinks they're great. It's early. It's so early. No need to be too dramatic. No need to be too dramatic, but I would say that you can't really be shocked at what you've seen. Like, there's no reason to be shocked at what you've seen when it's the same exact team as last year.
Yep, and I'm glad you brought up, that division, too. That's a good point, Jacob, about that. That's one thing, too, that, when Terry Francona was with the Guardians and the Indians, at the time, that division was also bad.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of times where I didn't think that the Indians had a very good team. I didn't think that the Guardians had a very good team. Let me be clear, they had a very good roster. You know what I mean? But I didn't think that they were as good as what they were being propped up to be because they played in such a poor division, or they would be right there in the mix of things because how poor the division is. He's going to have that same type of thing here in the NL Central with this Reds team, but can they hang around and take advantage of a weak division the way that his Indians and Guardians team did in the past? We're going to switch over to the positives. I know, obviously, Elliot, you touched on a few of those. We'll switch to the positives in a moment, but last thing here on Terry Francona, are you guys surprised at how much backlash he has caught 3 games into the season? Or maybe I'm making a bigger deal about it than it actually is. I, for one, am surprised at how quickly fans have jumped on Terry Francona. Are you guys surprised?
I was surprised all year last year with how much blame people continued to put on David Bell. So I won't put anything past the masses of this fan base at this point. So, we did say on the opening day show that we thought Terry Francona had a locked-in honeymoon period, and obviously that lasted about 12 hours till the 9th inning of that game. So, yeah, I guess I would be surprised how quick it is. But to watch the season we had last year where you barely had a roster of major league players, and somehow most of this fan base does the mental gymnastics to blame the failures of that team on David Bell, I won't put anything past him. So, yeah, I can't say I'm too shocked.
I'm not shocked at all. They kicked our other manager out of town.
What is this, 3 in a row?
Same problem. So, huh?
3 in a row?
Yeah. I listen. I'm not gonna cheer against Terry Francona. I'm not gonna do it. That's what I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna let this negativity overwhelm my body and say I'm right. I'm not gonna do it because we're 3 games into a season and I can be very much wrong. I won't do it. Now, if all these problems continue until September, then I probably will do it.
Well, I said yesterday, too, I was like, the last time the Reds had a Hall of Fame caliber manager and the fans thought they knew more than he did, well, we just got a decade of Brian Price and Riggleman and David Bell. So, maybe let's
don't throw Riggleman in there.
That's a stray for him. He didn't deserve that.
Unnecessary.
He pitched. He managed great.
He did an admirable job. He tried his hardest.
It was a good extra bullet point to add because you're right. I could have just said Brian Price and David Bell, but I needed that extra. I could have thrown Freddie Benavidez in there for that 5-game run.
That's true
as well. But yeah, Freddie Benavidez. Let's just add him in there too. That's what you got the last time this fan base thought they knew more than a Hall of Fame manager. Let's just put it that way.